Thought you're gonna go to, bro.
Let's move on. Stefon Diggs. Why don't we talk about
Nah,
Stefon Diggs? Stefon Diggs has been a topic of discussion for the Four Wide Fantasy Football Podcast for quite some time. He was the guy who, towards the end of last season, we were always saying, sit Stefon Diggs. Something is wrong in Buffalo. Something is wrong with Stefon Diggs. And ultimately, the Bills just said, you know what? We done. We are out. And so they traded Stefon Diggs to the Houston Texans to play with CJ Stroud alongside Nico Collins and Tank Dell. Stefon Diggs ultimately, and it was weird because the Houston Texans reworked his deal. I think he had like 3 years left on contract, and they reworked the deal to make it a 1-year contract.
Correct.
Yeah.
For about $22.5 million. So ultimately, Houston is saying, we're with you right now, but we're not committed long term. Stefon Diggs last year finished the season 107 catches, 1,183 yards, and 8 touchdowns. And that was considered more of a down year for Stefon Diggs as of recently. So Stefon Diggs now finds his new home in Houston. What do you guys think? Oh, wait, let me correct myself. I said that considered a down year. He had more targets than he had the year before. 2022, he had 110 catches. 2023, he had 107 catches. But the difference was 300 yards. Golly. And 3 less touchdowns. His yards per catch went down drastically. Anyways, what do you guys think about Stefon Diggs? Where would you rate him? What does this do for the Houston Texans offense? Will, why don't you go first, man?
I'm just going to say I would not be targeting Stefon Diggs this year. I think he's going to go way earlier in redraft than he needs to because of the name. He's got the name recognition, and people are going to see him and snatch him. But he needed 160 targets last year to have 107 catches. He's not getting anywhere near 160 targets in Houston. I would say maybe 110, 120 targets. So I think he's going to be in the 70 to 80 catch range. I don't think he sniffs 1,000 yards. I don't think he sniffs 8 touchdowns. So I predict him finishing in the wide receiver 22 to 30 range. So maybe a middle round pick. I would take Nico Collins and Tank over Diggs for this season. Both of those guys over Diggs as far as production. Yes, without looking back.
Woo. Bold. I mean, he's a bigger name.
Bigger name, but bigger name from the past. CJ has established chemistry. Diggs is coming in. And his drop-off the second half of last year, Diggs, it wasn't for lack of targets. He was still getting tons of volume and just wasn't producing. And he's not going to get anywhere near that volume this year. So I think the issues were bigger than personality conflicts. I think he's starting to fall off. So I think Houston brought him in as a nice third receiver for those 3 receiver packages. Obviously, he's an upgrade over Noah Brown or John Mechie. We don't even need to discuss that. But he's not going to be in the top 20 fantasy receivers.
That sounds like a popular name today.
Yeah, I don't. What's interesting? That's an interesting take right there. Because the first thing with the contract, with the Texans is that by him signing that deal, I think that was more. Yeah, they both mutually agreed, but I think that was more Stefon Diggs because he's all about his money. He wants to get another long-term deal, so there had to be mutual agreement there. From a fantasy perspective, I think signing Diggs is going to impact more of a Tank Dell than a Nico Collins. I think Stefon Diggs is going to still get his fantasy relevance. That's a good point, Will, on 160 targets. But I think that he's going to get his shine there. But here's the thing with Diggs. He didn't even end the season last year on a high note with the last 5 games. He averaged, 5 catches, 67 yards, and get this 0 touchdowns. Right. And he went from a guy within the first 9 games averaging 25 fantasy points to the last 5 game averaging 11 fantasy points. Like, I think a lot of that just due to him wanting to be out of Buffalo and want a new deal. But I still think he's going to be relevant. I do think he's going to go higher than needed in redraft leagues. But I think the the impact player will be impacted is going to be Tank Dell.
Yeah, no,
Mm.
I'm with you on that. I'm out on Stefon Diggs simply because I think people are going to want to draft him in like the second, third, maybe as late as the fourth round
Yeah, don't do that.
of your fantasy draft, and I'm just not going to do that. I don't think he's a wide receiver one anymore. Not in Houston at this point. I think the talent is there, but I think Houston knows something. I think the way in which he left Minnesota wasn't good. The way in which he left Houston wasn't good. I mean, was he traded to Houston or
Yeah.
did he sign?
Yeah, traded, and the Bills ate $30 million in dead cap.
So when you, oh no, excuse me, was he traded to Buffalo?
Yes, he
Yeah.
was traded to Buffalo.
When you got a guy who's been traded twice, there's probably a reason why. I mean, most guys don't get traded twice
Yeah.
in their career. You may get traded once. And if you're traded once, that's because what the franchise and what the organization is going to acquire, they value more than you're behind in their uniform. He was traded twice. And I don't think it was for financial reasons. I think it has something to do with his personality or something. Houston basically said, look, we are committed to only 1 year of you. And so I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if it's not working out. And then all of a sudden, he is not in their game script. I think his talent is there. I think he could be disgruntled. He publicly voiced his displeasure with Buffalo at certain points towards the end of the season last year. That is toxic. I'm not. I like what he's done on the field. Hey, shout out to the Minnesota Miracle. But I'm not buying him for fantasy football. Obviously, this doesn't hurt CJ Stroud, but I'm not buying him. Does anyone else feel anything differently though?
I don't. I'm not sure if I feel anything different necessarily, but I would buy him low. I would buy low for sure. He's a buy low, high reward player because okay, let's take the argument against him. Let's say he's a troubled player. Boom. He can't be worse than Antonio Brown when Antonio Brown went to Tampa Bay. So my point with that is he can at least behave for a year. We've seen it. He has behaved in multiple places for a year. So let's just assume he will behave for a year. All right, cool. So let's assume he's wide receiver three. I'm assuming the worst case scenario. He's wide receiver, he's now wide receiver one. Stefan Diggs versus the wide cornerback three on any team is
Yeah.
a matchup nightmare. Always. Guess who CJ will always go to? Because it's always going to be open if he's wide receiver one, if he's in the slot. I mean, sorry, wide receiver three, it will always be open against wherever cornerback is. So I feel like with those facts that I just stated, he's the person you probably will be you could target low, or get by low. However, he can yield you maximum return eventually. Or not even eventually. He could potentially yield you maximum return. Just based on because we are going unknowns right now. It's a lot of unknowns. And
Where do they line him up?
I think slot. It has to be slot.
I think he's gonna be a slot.
It has to be slot, and that's going to open a lot of things. Because if it's slot, if it's slot, you sure as well need to pay attention to Tank Dell, unless you would lose a lot of games. You need to pay attention to Nico Collins, who has a lot. He's a yak king as well. So you cannot double up Diggs anymore like he used to get doubled with the Buffalo Bills. He got doubled a lot. There's nobody else taking away heat from him with the Buffalo. But in this offense, bro, there would not be one single person who can afford to double anyone. So that's why I feel like it's a huge opportunity if you can get him low, bro. If you can get him low, that's a huge opportunity for whoever gets him.
Where do we so really quickly, where do you guys all have him as far as range, wide receiver? Where do you think he falls?
Hmm.
without explanation, so we can move on.
Okay, maybe
He
11,
was wide,
11 to 15. 15. 15.
he was a
Whoa.
wide receiver 9 this year. Towards the end, I probably have him between 14 to 18
Yeah,
range.
in here. 15, 14. Why, you think that's low or high?
I think that's high.
No, it
I
can't
think
be
that's
lower
high.
than that. No,
I'd have him between 16 and 22 at
then
best.
no, I can't do that.
What do you think, Will?
Yeah, there's too many question marks. I'm not. If he really drops in a draft, I'd take him, but not in the 4th round or earlier. It's just
But where do you think
Oh,
he
wow, you
finishes?
put
What
on
range?
high
Where do you think he
level?
finishes?
I put 22 to 30. That's what I said.
Oh,
Yeah.
really?
So here it is. Olu's highest on him. Will is lowest. But let's move on, guys. For time's sake, we got to move on.